Atmanamaranim Kritva Pranavam Chottararanим Jnana Nirmathanabhyasat Papam Dahati Panditaha Atmanamaranim Kritva Pranavam Chottararanim Jnana Nirmathanabhyasat Papam Dahati Panditaha. By making the individual the lower piece of wood and Om the upper piece of wood. Atmanam Aranim. Aranim means a piece. Atmanam here refers to the individual. Pranavam, the syllable Om. Uttarayani, the upper piece. And having done, what do we do? Jnana Nirmathana Abhyasa, through the churning by sustained practice of knowledge. Panditaha, the wise. Burns the bonds of ignorance. Dahati. Dahati means burns. The wise burns the bond of ignorance. Pasham. Pasham. Refers to the bond. Okay, right. So it's a very famous mantra, a very often used metaphor in the scriptural study. So the metaphor talks about the Vedic ritual of invoking fire. See, fire was an integral part of Vedic worship or Vedic prayer or ritual. So in order to invoke fire, if I have to light the lamp, I would conveniently take a matchstick and light it. As simple as that. In a matter of a few seconds, the job is done. But those days, when they had to light fire, they used this methodology by churning two pieces of wood. So when you put two pieces of wood together and churn it, create friction amongst the two pieces of wood, it invokes fire. So this process of invoking fire by rubbing the two pieces of wood is compared, the metaphor is compared to the upper piece of the wood and the lower piece of the wood. Compared to the upper refers to the Om. The lower piece of the wood is the Atmanam, refers to the individual, the Jiva. Don't mistake it to the self here. So the two pieces of wood, when they are churned, it creates a friction which ignites the fire. And when the fire is ignited, it consumes the fuel, which is the very wood itself. So what's interesting to note in this analogy is, as we said, the upper piece of the wood is the Atman, the lower piece of the wood is the individual. What is the fuel? The fuel that gets burned. As the mantra says, the fuel is the ignorance. It's the vasanas. The ignorance or the vasanas is the fuel. What is the fire? The fire is the knowledge, as he says, through the churning of sustained practice of jnanam, jnana, nirmathanam, abhyasat. the practice of this knowledge, of churning the knowledge. Now, what's striking here is the fuel and fire are contained in the very same wood. Where do you get the fire from? The fire is brought out from the wood, isn't it? As I said, when you churn the two pieces of wood, you ignite or evoke fire. So the fire is contained in the wood, and what is consumed is the very wood itself. Similarly, what happens when you churn the individual? When the individual is churned to the process of knowledge, the spirit and the matter, exactly like fire and fuel, are integral part of the wood. The jiva, the individual, constitutes of the spirit and matter. So when the wood is burned, the wood is burned because you have invoked fire, and the fire has been invoked through the process of churning. So nirmathanam, jnana nirmathanam. Nirmathanam means churning. The churning of the wood refers to the churning of the knowledge you have gained. Only when you reflect on the ideas, the churning is the process of reflection. And when you are reflecting, what are you trying to achieve? Is you're trying to negate the lower and you're asserting the higher. That is exactly the process that happens when you are reflecting. You are negating, you keep saying, neti, neti, I'm not this, I'm not this. So when you keep saying, I am not this, I am not this, you are negating the lower. I am not the body, dahati. You burn the body. You don't burn the body now. When the body, we don't refer it to the body. You say, it's me, no? The moment the person dies, you say, instantly you start saying, has the body arrived? Before that you say, has Mr. So-and-so arrived? Has Mrs. So-and-so arrived? You use the word Mr. and Mrs. and has the doctor arrived? You give it an identity, you give it a name, there's ahankar, there is personality, there's individuality. But the moment you die, all of that disappears. As a body arrived, that's all. And moments arrived, you're waiting. Waiting for what? Dahati. You don't want to keep it any longer than it's needed. It's very fresh because I attended a funeral yesterday of a relative. Whatever little vairagya I have is very lingering in my mind. As they say, because you had to go to the crematorium and see the whole process of the ritual, and you wait until the ritual gets complete. By the end of it, what is it all? Dahati, it's burnt off. So much of, other day we were talking, so much of exaggerated value we give to the body. The moment the body dies, it's only, everybody's thinking of getting rid of it. Dahati, burnt off. So keep negating. So when you are in that crematorium, what they say is smashana vairagyam. So the vairagyam This is a smashanam, smashana vairagyam. Now, what is smashana vairagyam? You've heard of this term, Amitama, before? A very somber feeling, a very a detached feeling people have. Yes, ma'am.
I don't think I've heard the whole expression, but vairagyam is discernment, is it?
Vairagyam is?
Discernment? Discretion?
No. Viveka is discernment.
Okay,
Viveka
sorry.
is discrimination. Vairagya is a total dispassion.
Okay, thank you.
So what is smashanam? Smashanam is, as we said, when you're in the crematorium at a funeral, there is the feeling is all your passion dies, isn't it? Everybody is very remorseful, everybody is very reflective, everybody is very contemplative, everybody is, there is no passion. What happens to all your desires and passion and in your crematorium? All have gone, disappeared, isn't it? You don't get excited. The world doesn't interest you anymore, at least momentarily. So the vairagyam that you exhibit is only in the moments that you spend in the crematorium. That's why it's called smashana vairagyam. So the vairagyam, which is a dispassionate feeling, you have developed a true dispassion, is you have developed a lack of passion for the world or what the world has to offer, because you become passionate towards the pursuit of the self. You're inspired by higher goals and aspirations. You're not inspired, you're not interested in what the world will not tempt. You have an inner abstraction to it. You have no value, whatever it is, you have no value. That is true vairagya. But the same feeling of vairagyam is experienced when you spend those few moments in a crematorium. The moment you leave the boundary of the crematorium, you go back home, you have a shower, you live, you come back to your normal self. Isn't it? What happened to that vairagyam that you experienced where the passion had no meaning for you? Genuinely, everybody becomes philosophical. Not that you're being hypocritical, you're being genuinely philosophical. I'm not talking you're being hypocrite, but what happens to that dispassion thereafter? So it is vicarious. That's what smashana vairagyam is. It's vicarious. You also feel that detachment when you are in presence of a man of wisdom, when you are in the company of wise people. A true wise man has no value for the world. So in their presence, also you don't exhibit that passionate excitement for the world, because they have rejected the lower and they've embarked on a higher journey. That's what wearing an ochre robe means. I've burned my desires for the world. So that vairagya is attained through the process of churning. The churning is negation and assertion. So when you say, I am not the lower, I am the higher, that process of churning, I'm not this, I'm that. So it's that process of, it's like a two pedals of a bicycle. You've got to negate and assert, the lower and the higher. This process you do, then and then only you burn the bond. The bond here is the vasanas. If you do not do churning, you will not get the benefit. Again and again, this thought is being pounded onto us. I don't know whether you are heeding it or you're not heeding it. The wisdom is that helps you, not jnanam. So when you churn, what is burnt is the fuel, which is the wood. What is left? What remains? Kashish, I want to ask you this question. In the ritual of these two pieces of wood, one symbolizes the upper, the lower. The upper is the self, the lower is individual. All right. But coming to the ritual, we said the fuel and fire is there in the very wood itself. And when you churn, you invoke fire, and what consumed is wood. Now, my question is, what remains when after the wood is consumed?
Guruji. My understanding would be that it would be the spirit or the true self, the true soul.
With reference to the ritual example, what remains?
Oh, with reference to the example, ashes. If
you say what remains is the ashes, then what is that it remains when you churn, when the ignorance is burned? What remains?
Oh, just knowledge or wisdom of the true self.
Now come back to the example. When the fuel and fire, which is fuel is the vasanas, the fire is there in the wood. When the wood get consumed, what remains? You said ashes. Would you want to reconsider what remains?
Probably nothing. Oh, just the. I'm not sure, Guruji.
No, I appreciate that. My job is to make you think, not necessarily right or wrong. But it's an interesting analogy. I'm only trying to say that when you extend the analogy to a little further, it has a deeper meaning. Yeah. Okay, right. Now, Rajima, as we said, the upper and the lower piece of wood both are churned to create a friction, and what gets consumed?
The lower gets consumed, Guruji. The lower portion of the wood piece gets consumed.
What is the lower piece of wood?
The individual vasanas. The individual's vasana.
But why do you say the lower piece only get consumed? The upper piece of wood also is
that the moment we
consumed.
ignite the lower wood, the upper wood is removed, isn't it, Guruji?
I don't know. You tell me.
We don't let that get burnt in the process. I don't know. That's my understanding of that irony, the churning of the wood. So I may be wrong, Guruji.
No. I'm not saying you're right. I'm also trying to understand you. Can anybody enlighten further? So from the explanation that the upper piece of wood is not allowed to catch fire, and when the upper piece of wood is churned with the lower piece of wood, it creates friction. The lower piece becomes the fuel, and the upper piece is kept aside. So in that sense, you say the upper piece remains, isn't it?
Yes, Guruji.
Okay. But if, let's say, both the piece of wood are create friction, both become fuel, then what?
what is left is the spirit, no Guruji? The fire also is, it gets extinguished, and the ashes are, after all, the fuel is consumed and the ashes are remaining, Guruji, and then eventually it dies down, the fire dies down.
Now, you drawed a parallel to say when the reflection happens, the vasanas get burnt out. Okay, in the philosophy of it, when the vasanas get burned out, what is left behind? The spirit, you said, isn't it?
Yes, yes, Guruji.
The spirit remains.
Yes.
Now, but when we come to the example, let's say we don't take the example that the upper piece of wood is taken out of the equation, but let's say both the piece of wood gets burnt. Then what remains? You can't say nothing, isn't it? Or you can't say ashes. What remains? Now, I'm intentionally taking that even the upper piece of wood gets burnt. What remains? Otherwise, it's very straightforward, no? As you say, the ritual. Okay, yeah, think along, Ma.
Yes, Guruji.
Yes, Gayatri Ma.
Guruji, it is this, the burnt wood shape as it is remains. So it is something like the individual wise person, like the churning of the happens, the person becomes wise. So it is parallelly, I feel like the wood is burnt, the wood remains, shape of the wood remains a burnt wood like. Could it be that it is with a why it's compared to a wise person after churning, how he is exhibiting?
But you still say that the upper piece of wood is not allowed to burn.
It is also burnt.
If it's burned, what will happen? You're only talking of being charred. You're not talking of it being burnt. If it's burnt, it is no more wood. No, it gets consumed by the fire, like a lower piece of wood. See, what I'm trying to get at is when you reflect, what is invoked is the inherent spirit within you. The spirit is inherent in you. So the process of churning or reflection invokes the spirit which is there. The spirit doesn't die. Similarly, in the process, in and through the process of the burning or invoking of the fire, what gets burned is the fuel, the wood. Here I'm taking the lower and upper piece both as the wood. Example, I'm stretching beyond. But what remains is that unseen element fire. If I were to hold a piece of wood, I don't know if I can, I don't have a piece of wood to show. But let's say, imagine something is a piece of wood. Imagine this is a piece of wood. It's just a pencil. But if this is a piece of wood, if there was no element fire in it, there wouldn't have been fire ignited, isn't it? Because remember, everything in the world is constituted of 5 elements: space, air, fire, water, earth. And one of the things yesterday when they were saying, is there still life in the person? They touched the body and said, no, it's cold. The body is cold. There's no more warmth, heat. So the first thing that goes when a person dies is the fire has left the body. So there is that fire within, which is unseen. So the fire element remains. So what remains is the fire element. Either way you take it, either you say that the upper piece of the wood is taken away, or even if the upper and the lower piece both get consumed, what remains is the element fire. The unseen element fire remains, just like the unseen spirit. What you see is gross fire. I'm going to the process of Panchikarana. In Atma Bodha, we learned the concept of Panchikarana, and again in the 15th mantra, we will take a mention of Panchikarana. So just wait for until we get to the 15th mantra. Panchikarana, Adi Shankaracharya alone talks of how these elements go through the process of grossification and mutual combination to form matter. So the matter that you see is a combination of pure elements and impure elements. So the pure elements, that is space, air, fire, water, earth, are not perceptible. Like the water you consume is impure water, but the pure element water is there in it to constitute it. So there, you may not understand it, but when we get there, I'm just mentioning, so the pure element fire remains, which is unseen, just like the spirit which exists in us is unseen. But when you churn, you burn away the bonds of attachment to the lower, you will be liberated to the higher. So the bonds of lower has to be liberated, to be burnt off. Sushmama, you're following? We can't hear you yet, Ma, please.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, yes.
When you say that you when it burns and you say, isn't it the wisdom which remains, which leads you ultimately to self-realization?
Absolutely. So the wisdom, what is the purpose of wisdom? What is wisdom? Wisdom, is it not unfoldment of yourself?
Yes.
So what remains at a relative level, when the desires get burnt out, the relative level wisdom remains. At the absolute level, you invoke the self. Like the purpose of the ritual is to invoke fire. Just like wisdom is an antidote for ignorance or vasanas, the fire is an antidote to destroy the wood, which is the fuel, ignorance. So relatively, you can say wisdom. Absolute level, you say it's the self, the reality. Okay, ma?
Thank you.
Right. Hariji, you wanted to say something?
Can we assume, Guruji, that is the upper arani also get burnt and the lower also get burnt? So it is a Jivatma Paramatma Aikyam. It's a union of, because still upper and the lower aranis are there, that is Dvaita. And when both of them are burnt, figuratively, can we assume that it's a union of Jiva with the Atman?
It is,
Jiva.
yes. That's what I'm just trying to.
Jivatma Paramatma Aikyam.
Yeah, Atman is one, Paramatma or Atman is one and the same. So we're only trying to extend and saying both the aranis, the upper piece and the lower piece, both get burned.
Both get disappeared. There is
just
no
an
more
extension.
Yeah, there is no more Dvaita.
Dvaita, yeah. Again, that's another perspective. But what remains, end of the day, is
the final,
the final self,
supreme,
the self, the supreme self.
The tattva.
Yeah. Okay, right.
Thank you.
But the real sadhana, again and again, we are saying, is the churning. You've got to go back to that process. To invoke the spirit within you, you must go through the process. Exactly through like the ritual of extracting butter from milk. You churn the curd, isn't it? The process of churning the curd or the yogurt in the early hours, the cream surfaces. But the butter or ghee is there in every drop of milk. But you go through the process of setting it, transforming it into a curd, and then churning it. That process of churning is negation, assertion. And something you should do when you're all by yourself. Let's say all of us go for a walk or do an exercise. As you're walking, every step you take, you can say, I am Atma Brahma. Each step, I am Atma Brahma. I am Atma Brahma. What is I am Atma Brahma? This Atman, this individual is that self. This is the abhyasa. You keep, as you're walking, you don't have to listen to music. You don't have to talk to anybody. You don't have to entertain any thoughts, any worldly thoughts. Just keep saying, this individual is that self. To begin with, it may be a monotonous mechanical exercise. Just keep, if you keep uttering, slowly but certainly you will start understanding what it suggests, that you are not this, you're not this. I am that self. I am Atma Brahma. I am Atma Brahma. Japa, again, Rajima, is another exercise, but it is limited to you being seated at a point and trying to help you to meditate. The same principle. But in your normal day-to-day activities, when you are engaged, you can inject this thought of rejecting the lower and asserting the higher. And as you keep doing it, the thought process gets intensified. You reject the lower. That's how you develop vairagya. End of the day, you will not be drawn by the lower passions, the lower temptations. All okay, Ramji? Any comments?
No, sir. I think it was brought out very well, and understanding wise now, this puts it in a capsule form, and that's very good. And I think it's only, the difficulty is only with implementation, but otherwise that how do we burn? How do we use this knowledge to burn our ignorance? How long will it take? How difficult is that path? And what are the obstacles on the way? And then how do we overcome them? I think these are all the questions which were going through my mind, but I think the route is clear. But
I wish I didn't ask you to comment, because now you ask me so many questions to which I may not have all answers, Yeah.
I think everybody has to find their own answers.
Yeah. The only way is to embark on the journey, start on the journey. Otherwise, a lot of ambiguity, a lot of uncertainty, a lot of questions arise. I just said, yes, each one has to find out. And answers, the Shastras give us answers. It comforts you, isn't it? It never dissuades, it only encourages you to embark. It's just a matter of you committed to doing that.
Yes.
But again and again, it only is reassuring us that
if you follow,
get
you
on
will
with
reach
it.
there. Yeah.
Yes, it's a matter of time. You will reach there, but just get on with it. Start the process. Otherwise, you may say that it's a random thought that you are taking it and blowing it out of proportion.
Yeah.
But it doesn't seem to be, isn't it? Any text you take now, again and again, various methodologies, it brings out the same essential teachings.
Yeah, because they're the people who gave these texts are the people who achieved it. And
Absolutely.
so from experience, they are saying, so it's like somebody who has reached the peak of Everest tells you that this is the way to do it, and you will reach. That carries the credibility. Otherwise, if I tell you that, then it won't make any impact on you, because I never did that.
Correct. Absolutely. Very true. But when you find the answers, share it with us, sir.
Yes,
Don't
sir.
please keep it with yourself, please. Huh?
No. I think by then I will, if I reach that selfless stage, I will freely share with everybody.
Oh, otherwise you will put conditions, huh?
No. I hope when I start sharing, I will reach that selfless stage.
No. You already very close to it. You don't know, sir. That's all.
Thank you, sir.
But when I say that Ushama is looking somewhere else, she's not looking at me.
Yeah, because she faces the everyday problems. So.
She doesn't have the eyes to see, so that's all, Iniki, I'll block her number so I don't get any message from her today. All right. Okay, sir. Harish, all okay? You're able to relate to the it's a traditional, as I said, a Vedic ritual, a very profound. We don't experience it, but again, how they are able to draw the deepest philosophies from something which was routine for them. For cooking, they had to do this. For prayer, they had to do this. For evening, they need a lamp. They had to go through this process of churning the wood. So it's something, an integral part of their daily routine. And imagine every time they go through this process of invoking fire, they're reminded of the Jnana Nirmathana Abhyasat. So profound, isn't it? It's so deeply meaningful. Isn't it, Harish?
Yes. Guruji, I wanted to ask a question. I was going to raise my hand. Guruji, since the purpose of our life is to realize ourselves, is it true that eventually, through many birth cycles, everybody will eventually attain self-realization, or not necessarily?
Eventually.
Everybody on this
But-
earth will attain self-realization at some point, regardless of birth they take.
No, it's not regardless. You need to get there. You will have to put an effort, though. One needs to. That is the very purpose of life. Everyone is being drawn to it. Everyone is unknowingly seeking it, but you will not get to it until you consciously seek it. That's the only qualification we are saying. How is everybody unknowingly seeking it?
Because they're all searching for peace and happiness through various means.
Nobody is contented. This morning when I got up, there was a conversation with Rajima yesterday night, because she's in US and I connected with her. And then passingly, I not told anything that, what do you want, Guruji, from US? She told, I said, I'm very upset that she didn't tell what can I bring for you. And she said, Guruji, please. And she had messaged me, which I saw only early this morning, that, Guruji, please tell me what can I bring for you. And in that moment of waking up, the first thing when I saw that message, I typed out to her, I said, I'm very contented, Ma. I said, did I not say that, Rajima? If you seriously ask me, is there anything that I want? I have to think deep and hard to say, oh, I don't have this and I want this and I'll be happy only if I get that. I have to think deep and hard. Maybe there could be things that you need to get on with doing things. But am I discontented? Am I dissatisfied? I wouldn't think so. So unconsciously, all of us are seeking happiness or contentment, and you're not contented. And you will not be contented until when? Until you get to the self. But if you run behind the world for seeking contentment, you would not remain contented. So the only way you will reach it is by turning inward, which is a conscious process. Then you will find, as you get, the only way you'll find contentment is by You know, Harish, how do you find contentment? Okay, you answer this. How do you not find contentment?
You don't find contentment when you're seeking happiness outside, you seek it within yourself.
In other words, when you keep chasing your desires, you keep multiplying and chasing them with a wanting to find happiness in the pursuit of your own self-imposed desires, you will never be contented. The only way one can reach contentment is by rising above your desires, rising above your selfishness, rising above your I and my. The moment you rise above yourself and seek something higher and burn away the lower desires, which is the bond of ignorance, as the mantra says, that is when you will find contentment, which is your spiritual nature. Being contented is your spiritual nature. So to the extent you are not chasing your desires, to that extent you're contented. Conclusion to the thought. To the extent you are not chasing your desires, you're contented. To the extent you run behind your desires, you will never be contented. Rajima, I spoke the truth. No, you didn't comment anything. So they will not, they think I'm lying. She is now certain that I am lying. That's it. You all you will keep, simply keep saying whatever you want, and you want us to believe that. But are you okay, Harish?
Yes, Guruji.
Right.